Should I hold off?
No, no, you're all good.
Okay. To begin, I guess just to tell you a bit about my history with Wikipedia, I started editing in 2006. I was on an engineering work term back at a different university, and my employers, much as I tried over about 2.5 months to really get any work to do, I couldn't get anything. But they gave me a computer and internet access, so at the end, out of sheer boredom, I discovered Wikipedia and created my first article about my favorite children's author, Nancy MacArthur. It's still a very short article, but it was kind of my start. And even though I started out by writing actually writing an article, starting an article, content-based information, the vast majority of my edits over the next 6 years were on cleanup and organization, making sure that article titles were consistent. I like to think that I had a hand in determining how disambiguation pages are formatted on the site. So I was primarily involved in a lot of behind-the-scenes things, not a lot of actually contributing content to the website, up until about 2 years ago, when I've gotten more active with actually starting articles, developing them, trying to get them featured up on the main page. Since I've started this program at Western, I've been less active. I've still been editing a lot, but I've kind of reverted back to the more organization of the project rather than actually developing content, just because it's been a busy program. One thing I should mention is that I'm probably going to refer to Wikipedia as the project a fair bit. On Wikipedia, editors tend to refer to it simply as the project. So in case that slips out a few times, that's what I mean. One thing that I should clear up, you may all already know this, but I've been quite surprised at how many people I have encountered who feel like not terribly comfortable with Wikipedia because for this particular reason. I met someone when I was living in Nova Scotia who when he found out that I was active with Wikipedia, he became concerned and said, well, isn't that associated with the Wicca movement? He thought it was like a religion. Anyway, so Wikipedia does have an article about Wicca, but it's not associated in any way, or with any other religious group. Wiki, the first 4 letters of Wikipedia, it's a term referring to, basically, it's a collaboratively edited website, and editable website. So if you find a website that has the word wiki as part of it, like WikiLeaks, or there's plenty of others, almost all of them are not going to be affiliated with Wikipedia. Wiki is simply a common noun, and so any publicly editable website is called a wiki, whether it's affiliated with Wikipedia or not. Now, that isn't to say that Wikipedia doesn't have affiliate websites. Wikipedia is part of a larger organization called the Wikimedia Foundation. And the Wikimedia Foundation has a variety of different projects, including Wikipedia. Wikipedia is certainly the biggest one, the one that's best known. Wikipedia is one of the top 10 most used websites in the world. The other ones are not in the top 10, but the other ones are still valuable. One of them, the Wikimedia Commons, hosts most of the images that are on Wikipedia, as well as on other websites. So if you're ever looking for images that you can use and not worry about copyright status, go to the Wikimedia Commons. There's a vast repository on a variety of subjects. And Similarly, if you've gone to any, sometimes if you've used a page on Wikipedia that has a little box going to a definition, then that'll take you to Wiktionary, which is the dictionary affiliate of Wikipedia. So there's a variety of other websites, and I won't go into all of them, there's quite a number. So those ones are actually affiliated with Wikipedia, all the Wikimedia Foundation projects. Also, there's another step removed from Wikipedia, which is Wikia. And I can go on to that there. Wikia is a for-profit organization that was founded co-founded by Jimmy Wales, who also co-founded Wikipedia. And so Wikipedia is a non-profit organization. It's based out of Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and it's a registered charity. Wikia is a business, and they're in it for profit. So this is how Jimmy Wales stays alive. And so Wikia, there's a lot of different Wikias. One of them is Wikipedia for Star Wars fans. There's actually two of the biggest ones are the Star Wars one and the Star Trek one. The Star Trek one is called Memory Alpha. So, but most of them actually, those are kind of exceptions. Most of them actually have wiki in the title. So those are the Wikia websites, and basically they look very similar to Wikipedia because they use the same templates basically. So often you may have come across professors or high school teachers who will use these templates. So it looks exactly like Wikipedia, but it's their own website. And so they're not affiliated in the sense of being a sister project like Wiktionary or the Wikimedia Commons Wiki, but they do use the same templates. So there are a variety of ways of explaining the history of Wikipedia, and I mean you can find the history of Wikipedia on Wikipedia, and now you can just go down to the history section. There's an entire article. I won't go click through to it, but you're free to do that. You can make up your own mind on the subject, but I tend to think that Wikipedia is very good at presenting its own faults. There's an entire article about criticism of Wikipedia on Wikipedia, and it's actually quite well developed. It's quite extensive, and it's not the only article that explains criticisms of Wikipedia. There's entire articles just about various controversies about Wikipedia. So I tend to think that it does a very good job at being self-reflexive. So there is that history there that you can read, and it's much more detailed than I'm going to give you now. But this is kind of the Wikipedia history according to David. Wikipedia started in 2001, and that's the official date that is celebrated every periodic number of years. But Wikipedia didn't really become the website that we would recognize as Wikipedia, really, I would argue, until 2003. So about 2 years later. And it wasn't really until 2005, so 2 years after that, that it came on the international scene. So we started seeing a lot of academic papers written on the subject of Wikipedia. 2005 was when the iconic Nature article came out claiming that Wikipedia was just as reliable as Encyclopedia Britannica. And that was very early in its history. And I've being part of the Library and Information Science program here at Western, I've been doing a lot of my projects, my class projects on Wikipedia, doing research on the subject. And it's been interesting to see the shift from, oh no, I don't know what to do with this Wikipedia thing, to a lot more acceptance of it in recent years. the vast majority of sources written since 2009, so in the past 5 years, have been very supportive of using Wikipedia in academic settings, especially when they've been written from librarians' perspectives, which I've found encouraging going into librarianship. So 2001 it started. 2003 it really became what we recognized. 2005 it became popular and everyone found out about it. The next year is when I got on board, 2006. And then in 2007, 2008 approximately, is when Wikipedia, its policies and editing guidelines really became established. Up until that point, they had been somewhat in flux. There had been debates about how articles should be formatted, how editing processes should go, but around that time, most of the processes became firmly established, and they're always in flux. They're always changing a little bit, but mostly the form that they have now is what we had back in around 2008. So that's a brief history of it. The two founders of Wikipedia were Jimmy Wales, who I've already mentioned, and is probably a name that you've heard. He's kind of the iconic figurehead of Wikipedia. The other one is Larry Sanger, and so he's pictured up there, and he broke off after a few years to found Citizendium. So, and that's probably why why he's not as well known. Citizendium was founded on the principle that Wikipedia, that the encyclopedia should be edited by experts, and so Citizendium really has as its core expertise as the basis for disseminating knowledge. And Wikipedia has, from its beginning, been opposed to that concept, that the information that it's disseminating is not, doesn't have its grounding in the fact that the editors are experts, but rather that all the information is verifiable in published sources, and that all of the published opinions on a subject are presented proportionally. And so it's very much more, so if there's information in an article that is questioned, the manner of determining whether or not the information is reliable, the manner of doing that is not to go and see who edited this, what are their qualifications, but rather go back to the source texts and see if they correspond. So, I mean, there are going to be different opinions on this subject. I tend to think that the reason that Citizendium didn't take off nearly as well as Wikipedia is primarily that difference. And I bring that up partially to explain that one of those core things about Wikipedia. Wikipedia does not claim or attempt to present truth. It claims and attempts to present all the opinions on a subject proportionally. So, and that's a kind of an easier thing to determine. And one of the things that established, even though that was kind of a core principle right from the beginning, one of the events that made that more prominent in Wikipedia and kind of established that more strongly was the SJ controversy. So I mentioned that there were several articles about Wikipedia controversies. The SJ controversy was, basically the summary was, there was one editor who was claiming to have all these degrees in a particular subject, and was arguing that certain content in various articles should either remain as they were or change, based on his authority. He had degrees in this subject, he knew what he was talking about, this was correct information. But it was found out eventually that he didn't have those degrees, and that he was just making all of this up, and these were his own opinions and what he wanted to have presented. And so there was the controversy got lots of attention, and all of the articles he had ever worked on were thoroughly reviewed, and like all of the unsourced information was taken out and all of that. But it was fairly early in Wikipedia's history, around the time that I started editing, actually. And so since then, Wikipedia has been much stronger on this point that if I have qualifications for editing, like I have a degree, a master's in English literature. If I'm writing an article about English literature, then it is irrelevant that I have that degree. What is relevant is that I'm citing sources that are corresponding to the information that I'm putting in the article, and that I can demonstrate that there's a correspondence. Yeah. So that isn't to say that Wikipedia doesn't want people who are educated on particular subjects to be editing. We certainly do. But on Wikipedia, it kind of levels the playing field. The people who are editing, everyone's contributions are determined to be valid based on whether or not they correspond to sources, not whether or not they've been recognized by a particular body as being credible in a particular subject area. So the Wikipedia employs less than 200 employees, and I believe it's not even close to 200 employees. The last estimate I heard was around 125-ish. So there aren't a lot of people, and primarily those people maintain servers. They do promotions. They encourage professors to use Wikipedia in the classroom, that kind of thing. It's not, Wikipedia doesn't employ people to edit Wikipedia, edit Wikipedia articles. And that's an important thing about Wikipedia, because if Wikipedia editors were paid by any source specifically to edit, then that would call into question motives, and so it is a foundational policy on Wikipedia that all editing should be volunteer. So if you've used Wikipedia, which I expect probably everyone here has, you've probably gone on to various articles. You may or may not know about the other spaces on Wikipedia. There's a variety of different spaces that are editable on Wikipedia, not just what is called the main space. So where you can see the articles that often come up in Google searches and that kind of thing. And I won't go through all of them, but I can go through some of the ones that you're likely to find helpful if you're starting to edit. One is the talk page. So if you click the tab up on the top there, you can you get to the talk page, and you can scroll down, and these are various discussions that are going on about this article. Not about the subject of the article, but about the article itself, and whether or not it should develop in different ways. And so if you want to discuss with other editors an article, then this is the place to go. And this also gives the history of the article. So it explains that it has this good status, and it goes through all of the different times that major things have come up with this article. So it was nominated for deletion 4 times in 2007, and it was a featured article candidate, but it wasn't promoted. So you find the history of the article. Also, another tab to keep in mind is the edit. If you click edit, then a box will come up and you'll be able to go in and edit things and save the page, and that'll change the article. Also, viewing history. The view history tab. So nothing is ever removed from Wikipedia. That's not entirely true, but in almost all cases, whatever someone puts on Wikipedia or takes off Wikipedia, every iteration of a Wikipedia article is retained on Wikipedia for everyone to be able to view if they go into the history. So if you want to know what this article looked like 5 years ago, all you need to do is scroll down to the right date, click on it, and that'll show you what the article used to look like on that date. So if you put in on information, you don't need to be afraid that that's going to be lost somehow. It's always going to be there. And if it's valid, important things that someone removed without just cause, then you can go in and just, like, with the click of a button, it'll come back. So that's revision history. Now, neither of those are different spaces. The only ones that I've shown you so far are the main space, which is where the articles are, and the talk space. Another space that you might be interested in is user space. So here's my user page. It explains things about me, and different user pages have different things on them. People like to, sometimes users give each other barn stars, and so I've gotten a few over the years from other users just saying, good job on doing this thing. But different users put on different things, and they can put nothing on there if they like. But the real benefit of having a user page partially is to introduce yourself to the other editors of Wikipedia, but it's also for the purposes of corresponding with each other. So the user talk space is not a place to discuss a particular article, but to discuss various things with other editors. So if you want to contact me on Wikipedia, you'd go onto my talk page, and you could start a new section by clicking the new section tab, or you could start in on an article, a conversation that's already started, and you click edit there and add a message. One important thing, if you're just starting off editing Wikipedia, it's important. Say I was going to start a new section here, a new discussion. I put on a title, whatever, and then a message. And then when I was finished writing my message, I need to put on 4 tildes. So there's a shift and then the top left-hand button on the keyboard, and that will automatically put in either my username or my IP address. And this brings up the purpose of having an account. I would highly recommend having an account on Wikipedia if you're going to be editing, or if you're going to be corresponding with other editors, because it gives you a unified presence on Wikipedia. Otherwise, whatever computer you're using or network you're using is going to just generate the IP address that you're using and put that up. And as soon as you move to a new place or use a different computer, it's going to give you a different IP address. And so people aren't going to be able to contact you again. You're not going to be able to receive the messages that they sent you before. So it's very important within the Wikipedia community that we don't discriminate against the IP editors. But I would recommend, it would be beneficial if you're going to be editing to actually have an account. And to have an account, all you need to do is click Create Account, fill in that brief information, and then you've got an account. It's very quick. So But because it's very quick, I would highly recommend that you come up with a username, that you think through a username that you're going to want to keep. Because it is possible to change usernames, but it's very difficult. I've had to do this on other sister projects so that I can have the same username across all of the sister projects, and it can be time consuming. So yeah, make sure that you choose a username that you're going to be happy with for a long time, and also that that is going to encourage good relations between you and other editors. So I mean, you probably never do this, but I have come across users who have offensive usernames, and things just generally don't go well for those users. Yeah. So that's the main space, the talk space, and the user space. Another important space is the Wikipedia space. That might seem redundant, but the Wikipedia space is, so you get to the talk space by writing talk and then colon, and then the name of the article. You get to user space by taking user colon, and then the name of the user. You get to the Wikipedia space by either typing out Wikipedia colon, or just WP colon. And then you type in whatever the name is of that page in the Wikipedia space. And the Wikipedia space is more for things like editing guidelines, policies, how-to pages. So if you want to know how to create a table on a Wikipedia article, there will be a page on that. Also, Wikipedia space is for collaboration. So there's a variety of what are called wiki projects. And wiki projects are groups of editors who are all interested in a particular subject. So for example, wiki project psychology. So the wiki project psychology is about psychology articles and about editing them. And so if you scroll down, most wiki projects will have a box that looks like this. And this, the projects have a variety of purposes. I won't go into all of them, but one that's important for when you're starting off is this box. And this box explains the statistics about this particular subject's coverage on Wikipedia. And so there are a total of 15 featured articles relating to psychology on Wikipedia. And so one thing that I like to say about Wikipedia articles is that every Wikipedia article wants to be featured. And so most Wikipedia articles, and it is important that it's most, not all, but almost all Wikipedia articles have the ability to be featured if someone, if a group of editors puts enough time and effort into developing that article to featured status. Most of them are able to do that at some point, hopefully in the future. But every article on Wikipedia has a different status, that whether it's featured or not. And it ranges. So it goes from, most articles start out as stubs. So those are just very short articles, might be a one-liner, might be a three-liner. Then they go to start. Start class articles are articles that are longer than stubs, but don't really have, they're not really well developed. C class articles are better developed. They have some sources in them, but they're lengthy, but they're still not great quality. B class articles are the first class of articles where depending on the subject, sometimes there's a process that's like a formal process where the article is accepted as being B class. That's not always the case. in some subject areas, it's simply, oh, that's about B class, and we'll put it in B. But, and this may seem strange. It should go from C to B to A. That would be logical, but it doesn't quite go like that. It goes from C to B to good, to A, to featured. So the top is featured, even though it's not written here, there just doesn't happen to be any A class psychology articles. It goes featured, A class, good class, B, C, start, study. And so good class articles it is a formal process for everything. So no matter what the subject, if you're trying to get an article to good status, then it goes through, it's normally about a month or 2 month process.
I assume that they stand for feature article. What does that tell us again?
I'm glad you asked. And I will put it off just for a moment though. But I will respond to that soon. So good class articles, it is about a month-long process normally. It can be shorter than that, but it's not too grueling. And then the A class is kind of for articles generally that aren't quite featured, but they want to recognize it as being better than good. And so very few articles ever get to A status. Normally they jump from good to featured. And then featured articles are the ones that are considered the best on Wikipedia, and so that's quite a lengthy process. And it's a difficult one to get through. I've managed to get articles up to feature status 5 times. Now, I haven't been trying for most of that time to actually develop articles to featured status, but because most of the time I've been organizing articles rather than developing content. But it is quite a difficult process. Now, the FL is featured lists. So I mentioned that not all articles are able to be get to featured article status. Well, one of the exceptions, the biggest exception is the lists. And actually, featured lists are one of the things that I work with most on Wikipedia. Every Monday and Friday, there is a blurb, like a short summary of a featured list that goes up on the main page. And most Mondays and Fridays, I write those blurbs. And so I've enjoyed getting into that portion of Wikipedia. But for list articles, like for example, list of London Underground stations. This is an article that went up on the main page a while ago. I spent a lot of time working on it, even though it was already at featured status by the time that I had started working on it. I was just preparing it for the main page. And this, so because this is a list, it's not primarily paragraphical information, then it's considered a list, and it doesn't go through all of that stub, start, CV, all of that. There's only 2 quality statuses for lists, and that's either list status or featured list status. And there is a formal process for it to be recognized as featured list, but it's you don't have to go through all the other steps. It just goes from list to featured list. Another exception to going along those quality statuses is disambiguation pages. So you've probably encountered some of these. Type orange into the search bar, and you come up with a disambiguation page, which isn't about the fruit or the color or about any of the other things that orange could mean, but rather just a list of all the articles that you could have intended. Anything that could have been referred to, you could have been referring to by using that term. And so there are a variety of things you could refer to using the word orange, and disambiguation pages are just disambiguation pages. They don't go along the quality statuses like regular articles. There are a few other exceptions, but those are the ones that you're most likely to encounter. And the quality statuses are beneficial for knowing approximately how reliable is this article, to what degree has this article been developed. But really the status that matters is featured article status, or featured list status, because it's only featured articles and featured lists that are eligible to go up on the main page. So if you go to the main page by clicking on the big bulb in the top left, then today's featured article, it's updated every 24 hours based on Greenwich time. So it doesn't quite correspond to our time, but it's updated every 24 hours, and this is always a featured article. And so if an article goes up in this little box on the main page of Wikipedia, it's seen almost always by at least 10,000 people. And that's just the people who click through to the article, click here, and go on to the featured article itself. That doesn't include any of the people who just read this portion. So it really is worth having an article, like going through that lengthy, difficult process of getting an article featured and up on the main page, because it really does, if there's a subject that you really think that people should know more about, then this is a great way to do it. I explained on my user page some of my reasons for editing Wikipedia and investing in that so strongly. And one of the primary reasons is that I've written 2 theses, one for my undergraduate and one for my last master's, and I spent many months researching and writing those articles, and ultimately they were read by about 4 people, maybe if I'm lucky. Whereas I've written 5 featured articles on Wikipedia, which have taken me comparable amounts of time, but they've been read by tens of thousands of people. And some of them were like about 10,000 of those were within the space of a single day. So I do think it's beneficial to Wikipedia. Yeah.
The in the news. What reason is that? In other words, are all those things that are happening today, or?
They're not all today. So like Maya Angelou died a few days ago, but they are up. So the today's featured article is updated on a 24-hour basis. It's always at midnight Greenwich. But in the news is updated constantly. So whenever there's a major news story that is on the scene, it'll go up on there. And I actually really like the Wikipedia top news stories. I read these every day because they aren't specific to any particular country, and they aren't specific to any particular subject area. A lot of news websites tend to focus on politics or only sports or something. Any major breakthroughs in chemistry or physics will go up on this. Like anything that is major world news will go up in this section. So I like it for that reason. And just to explain the other portions of the main page, just below the today's featured article is the Did You Know section. And these are, it says, new and recently improved content. So it's generally newly created or newly largely expanded articles. And generally the ones that are considered, yeah, this is worth putting out. And so they're not the best articles on Wikipedia. They're the ones that, oh, this is exciting that someone developed it. And this is not, this one's updated, if I recall it correctly, every 6 hours. It's around that. So you could go in at various points in the day and that'll be different.
Changing everything every 6 hours, or just changing it?
The entire one. So it'll be in blocks. So they'll put up an entire block for about 6 hours, and then 6 hours later they switch it to another block. Then right next to it, on this day, this one is also updated daily based on Greenwich time. And at the top, it explains the various festivals and observances throughout the world. And then it'll explain various years when this day in history, this particular thing happened. And so that's there every day. And also today's featured picture, that goes up also every 24 hours. And these are all featured images on the Wikimedia Commons. So Wikimedia Commons is what determines whether these images are featured rather than Wikipedia itself. And then on Mondays and Fridays, between, so just above the today's featured picture goes today's featured list. And the today's featured list is what I'm most active in working on. It only started off a couple of years ago, and it used to be only once a week. And so I was very excited back in February this year that they switched it to twice a week, or we switched it, I guess. So I've been enjoying working on that. I hope it'll eventually be daily, just like the other sections. If you are, could I do a show of hands? Has anyone edited Wikipedia before? All right, okay, awesome. If you are considering editing more regularly, one thing that I find new users, new editors, often become very frustrated with, or an early mistake for people to make that prevents them from going further, is they come up against the General Notability Guideline. So if you want to go to the General Notability Guideline, type in WP : for the Wikipedia space, and then GNG. And it'll bring you to the General Notability Guideline. And the General Notability Guideline states that a subject must have significant coverage in reliable secondary sources. That phrase is integral to Wikipedia. Reliable, or it's significant coverage in reliable secondary sources.
Just says reliable sources now.
Sorry?
It just says reliable sources now. The secondary is not there.
Sorry, yeah. So that are independent of the subject is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I think it used to be phrased here secondary, and they switched it to independent because they recognized that tertiary and quaternary sources were also acceptable. But basically, it's important for there to be significant coverage. And significant coverage, it's a bit of a subjective area, but generally, there are different guidelines for different subjects. So you can go into the notability guideline for books. If you want to write an article about a book and you're not sure if it's notable, you can click on the notability guidelines for books, and that'll give you the various guidelines that'll be helpful so you can determine whether it's notable enough to write a Wikipedia article about it. Similarly about music or films. But in general, it's important that the sources, there be several sources that are all about this subject, not just mentioning it tangentially. It's important that those sources are reliable sources, that they're not blacklisted from Wikipedia, or that we can trust those sources. And that they should be sources that are independent of the subject. So if I'm writing a Wikipedia article about a particular company, then the sources, the vast majority of the sources that I'm using should not be the official statements given by that company. They should be from independent sources. And yeah.
Just to go on that, if it's a company like you say, what about something like an annual report, which is put out by the company, but it's a very good source for information on that company, then would you be able to use it? Or?
Well, you would be able to use it. You can use primary sources kind of on any article, but they can't be used to determine whether the article, the subject is notable.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, yeah, I can't make up something and then write a lot about myself,
right.
And have my own Wikipedia. Yeah, so that's the general notability guideline. And there's other notability guidelines, but that's the major one to keep in mind when you're starting off. On Wikipedia, there's been a lot of studies on who edits Wikipedia, because people don't have to say who they are. Now, for the past couple of years, I've been putting on my user page, as you saw, my name and a picture of myself. So people know who I am. But a lot of users, they don't put on their identity. And so there have been studies to see who edits Wikipedia. And by and large, it's a lot of men. There's very few women who edit Wikipedia. Very few, I mean, it's less than 20%, I believe. And that hopefully is changing. It's also far more Americans than people from any other country. And it's also in particular subject areas. So one of the things that Wikipedia has been trying to do over the past few years, there's been a lot of projects trying to get more women to edit Wikipedia. So if you're a woman in the audience, please edit Wikipedia. We need more women editing Wikipedia. We need your perspectives and manners of editing Wikipedia, whether those differ or not. And also, we need more people who are knowledgeable about various subjects that are not as well covered. I didn't bring you through this, but I will now. If you go through WP:FA, you can also do this with FL to get the featured lists, but this gets you to the featured articles. And it's just a list of all of the featured articles on Wikipedia. And you can just scroll through those and see which ones are there. But you'll notice that some of these, they're divided into sections by content, by subject area. And some of the subject areas there's plenty of articles that are featured on that subject. Like the warfare, there's tons. And sports, there's a lot. Other ones, there's not so much. So the ones where there are lots are biology, history, literature, media, music. There's a lot of articles on this subject. So if you're knowledgeable on those subjects or interested in editing, please feel free to do so. We have, there's a lot of precedent for that, so it'll be easier for you to determine how to format the articles, and you'll have a lot of support because there's already established communities on Wikipedia that will be there to support you in developing those articles. Instead, if you're knowledgeable about business, linguistics, mathematics, philosophy, psychology, there are a few other subject areas. Those subject areas have very few featured articles, and also much less development on Wikipedia. And so if you're knowledgeable on those subjects, please edit on religious studies. Please edit on those subjects. We need more development in those areas. One of the, for one course that I'm doing right now, I'm proposing a research study to determine why that's the case, why certain subjects are well developed on Wikipedia while others aren't so much. Yeah, so I guess we've got another 10 minutes left. I did kind of want to leave some time for you to ask any questions if you like. Do you have any questions?
Just on like a normal article, does it ever, can you find what stage that article is in?
Yes, for sure. So, well, let's go to Caravan. This is the first article I ever got featured back in 2008. It's an article about an island in Senegal. If you look at the top right-hand corner of the article, you'll see that there's a golden star. And that means that the article is featured. So if you ever see that star there, then it's featured. instead, let's see, how about, here's another article I've been working on about a documentary film about human trafficking. And in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a green circle with a little cross in it. That means that it's good status. Now, those are the only two statuses where there will be a little symbol there. All the other ones we need to find by going to the top page, and then scrolling down just a little bit most of the time. And then it'll say right there. So there should be a block, and so you open one of the Wiki project boxes, and it'll say that this one says that it's a good article. It'll say B or C, whatever it is. So the top page is where you get most of the background information on an article. Also, if you go onto the article itself, in the top right-hand corner, sometimes you'll notice that instead of a gold star or a green circle, there will be a lock, like a metal lock. And that means that the article has often been subject to vandalism. And so to varying extents, there are different color locks, depending on what kind of lock is on the article. But those locks prevent different kinds of editing of the article. So sometimes it's only administrators who can edit that article. Sometimes it's only users who have accounts can't be IP addresses. Different things like that. Sometimes it's only a lock to prevent it from the article from being moved to a different title. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yes. I was looking at library science, and I see it is grossly underrepresented.
Oh, yeah. I've noticed that as well.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps it's an observation, not a question.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely puzzled as to why is it librarians or library science students have not been contributing to Wikipedia.
Yes, I found that strange as well, because ever since I got involved with this program at Western, there's been plenty of support for my editing on Wikipedia and interest in that, and professors have been excited that I've been doing research on the subject. We have a professor here who does a lot of research on Wikipedia. And actually, I attended a conference, the Wikimedia Foundation flew me to DC last year to attend a conference about how to improve the relations between Wikipedia and academia. And, so we did a lot of work on improving the relations between like libraries and museums especially. And plenty of the people I met who were really involved in Wikipedia, who were administrators, were like professionally, they were librarians. It just happened to be the case. So I agree, it's kind of surprising that there isn't more development. Although I tend to think that the reason is that the librarians are not so much interested in writing about librarianship as they are in like curating the website as a whole, you know. But I would love to see more development in that area.
The degree of separation from a topic that's required to edit something. I mean, if I were to say an article on Wikipedia about the neighborhood I live in,
Yes.
How much separation are you looking for?
How much separation as in how close do you personally need to be?
Yes.
That's a good question. I didn't go into that. Generally, there's two different types of articles that people are not supposed to write about. I should not write an article about myself, even if I'm a notable person, even if I am the most notable person in the world. I cannot edit my own Wikipedia article. The other one is anyone I work for. So if I work for Western, then I can't write an article, a Wikipedia article about Western. There are some ways around that, but they're contentious. So I would recommend not writing any articles about yourself or about anyone you actually work for.
Versus volunteer?
That's generally quite fine. If you are part of an organization that doesn't employ you, that doesn't give you money to do so, and you want to write about that organization, you are more than welcome. Now, the one thing about editing Wikipedia is that anyone else can go in and change what you've put in. They can put in all of the bad things about your organization. And so if someone puts in validly sourced content that's sourced to a reliable source, that's verifiable, then that information should not be removed, and basically will, in very few cases, will be removed. So that's something to keep in mind in writing about something that you're close to as well.
Can you talk a little bit about how vandalism works and how they kind of address that when it happens?
For sure. That is a kind of a major question. The Wikipedia community has gotten much better at addressing vandalism over the years, and does a much better job at it than I think it often gets credit for. Because one way that I like explaining this is that, and I didn't come up with this myself, but Wikipedia has all manner of potential problems that just don't happen in reality. The reality is that the majority, like the vast majority of people who edit Wikipedia are trying to improve the project. Vandals tend to be short-lived. They don't tend to stick around very long, and their edits tend to be pretty easily findable and revertible. Because all that I need to do to revert vandalism is to click one button. I don't need to go in and recreate all the content. I just need to get to revert that